I had poured my heart and soul into making the company show some progress. But my CEO wife kicked me out of the executive team. Just to let her lover replace my position. The two of them openly professed their feelings in front of me. One was crying like a delicate flower, begging me to hand over my shares. The other, with deep affection, said, if I were her husband, I wouldn't let her be in such a difficult position. A husband shouldn't keep secret money, he said. But unexpectedly, I slammed the table and outright refused going on strike. This caused the company to fall into an unprecedented crisis. My wife cried and begged me to come back, begging me not to abandon her. I agreed right then and there. But the next second, I pulled out the divorce agreement from my underwear and slapped it on her face. I said, how could I abandon you? You still owe me what's mine. Chapter 1. The first day off from work, so satisfying. It wasn't until I turned 27 that I realized how wonderful it is to wake up naturally. I stretched lazily in bed, grabbed my phone to check the time. As soon as I unlocked it, a flood of calls and messages popped up. I casually answered one, and immediately the voice of the general manager came through, full of reproach. He scolded, George, why haven't you been coming to work? The proposal for the client is due tomorrow, and no one is handling it. We're all panicking. I turned over, adjusted my position, and responded slowly, Manager, we had the annual meeting a few days ago, and the boss personally gave me time off. I've already handed over all my work. You can just talk to Makoto about it. The general manager hesitated, stuttering. He hesitated, saying, Makoto, he's still in the adjustment phase. I scoffed. Then it looks like you'll need to help him more. All right, I'm hanging up now. Before the general manager could say anything more, I ended the call, tossed the phone aside, and pulled the covers over me. It was only 9 a.m. Plenty of time for another nap. As for how chaotic the company was, what did that have to do with me? I was just an ordinary employee the boss had given time off to. However, before I could even settle back in, there came a loud banging on the door. George, come out here. Hearing that voice, my sweet dream was ruined. I opened the door with irritation and asked, what's the matter? Willow stood in the doorway, hands on her hips, aggressively poking me in the chest. She complained. Seriously, it's just because you lost the promotion and year-end bonus. Do you have to make a scene like this? There's so much going on at the company. Can't you take care of your handover work and do something else? I lowered my head and scratched my ear, muttering softly to myself, I think I was just mentally assaulted. I need another nap to recharge. In a flash, I slammed the door shut and locked it. Willow was stunned by my reaction. Standing there in shock, she shouted from behind the door, George, if you keep this up, we'll just get a divorce. Chapter 2. I was speechless. Why does she always love to threaten me with this? I pinched the bridge of my nose, leaned against the door, and sneered, fine, let's get a divorce. We'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. Whoever doesn't go is a son of a bitch. Willow's voice dropped in an instant. When the hard approach didn't work, she switched to the soft one. She pleaded, darling, I'm sorry. I was just too anxious earlier, but the company is really in chaos right now. Can you help me out? The new year is almost here, and we can go skiing together afterward. Okay, didn't you say you wanted to take me to experience something different? As she softened her tone and started to act cute, my thoughts began to drift. Willow, my boss and my wife, honestly, with my abilities, whether it's joining a Fortune 500 company or starting my own business, it would have been easy. But because Willow and I had been together since we were in school uniforms and walked down the aisle, I resolutely turned down a 7-figure salary and joined Willow's family business. They called it a family business, but it was really just a construction company that had been passed down from her grandfather's generation. By the time it got to Willow's, the company was already in trouble, having hired too many useless relatives who didn't know anything. It was my aggressive reforms and desperate efforts to secure investments that saved the company. Willow gave me 5% of the shares and kept me as the team leader for 5 years. Once the company was on track, I remained busy, while Willow, unable to bear the loneliness from my long hours at work, found herself a pretty boy, calling him a student in need of support. Just last week, she openly brought him into the company, making him the new team leader to replace me. The promise she made to Lou to have me as the deputy general manager was also forgotten. The most outrageous part, she was worried I'd have a confrontation with the guy at work, so she told me to take a break at home. That's why I decided to lie down and relax at home. But that pretty boy has no real skills, and sure enough, he caused a mess, which I had to clean up in the end. It's laughable. I do the work, and he gets the pay. How is it possible for him to land such a deal? I used to love Willow and willingly gave my all for her. Then I was reluctant to lose my shares, unwilling to let 5 years of hard work go to waste. Now, I don't want her anymore, and I don't want the company either. I'm curious to see if they can still keep things smooth without me. Chapter 3. In the end, I returned to the company, As soon as my left foot stepped through the door, several employees surrounded me. They spoke all at once. George, the client wants to discuss the proposal. We need to meet tomorrow to go over the details. George, the data for TNU's report is incorrect. They want it redone. George, the design draft needs to be revised again. I've sent the new requirements to your WeChat. George, the annual report is out. Do you want to take a look? I was speechless. I waved my hand and said, "Stop, stop, stop. Don't crowd around." I made a stop gesture, but the employees kept pushing forward, forcing me against the glass door. Helpless, I took a deep breath and shouted, "Can't you understand when I'm speaking nicely? Stop crowding." Normally at the company, I follow the principle that it's better to do a little more than a little less. I usually try to help with problems, but now these people were pushing their luck. I pointed at each of them and said, the meeting time for the proposal is already set. You can go without me. Verifying data is something anyone can do. If you can do it, then do it. If you can't, then get lost. Didn't you hear the handover instructions? You should be looking for Makoto, not me. Got it? The people I pointed at lowered their heads, speechless. After I finished speaking, a cup of water was handed to me from the side. I glanced over, and the person immediately avoided my gaze. He said, "George, I just came to deliver this form. If you scold them, you can't scold me." I chuckled and patted his shoulder, saying, "You're not bad. You've got potential." I put my arm around his shoulder and walked into the office. The other employees quickly stepped aside. After all, I had just been quite assertive, and no one wanted to get on my bad side, except for Makoto. I went straight to the office. As soon as I walked in, he had already brewed coffee and was waiting for me. He said, "George, you're here. You must be tired. Sit down and rest." I held up the plastic cup in my hand and said, "I'll just drink this. Don't stare at me, and don't rush to thank me. I've already made it clear to Willow, I'm just here to help supervise. I won't help with your tasks. We need to avoid any suspicion. You understand?" Chapter 4. After sitting down, I started playing games. An hour later, after playing Happy Match, Angry Birds, and some farming games, he couldn't take it anymore. He asked, "George, could you take a look at this proposal and see if it's feasible?" I took the tablet, skimmed through it briefly, and then flashed a brilliant smile. I said, "My review is garbage. If you scatter some rice on the keyboard, even a chicken could write better than you. A 500K budget for materials, and you quoted 200K. What's going on? Is the client your dad? Are you planning to pocket the remaining 300K yourself?" For the entire day, my sarcastic remarks echoed throughout the company. Eventually, Makoto broke down in tears, a man in his 20s, and a few harsh words made him feel so wrong that he turned and ran out. When he came back, he brought Willow with him. Willow, looking displeased, said, "George, I know you're unhappy with Makoto. He may be inexperienced since he just graduated, but isn't this exactly the time for you, as his senior, to help him out? This is one of the year-end projects for the company. Getting it done early is good for everyone. You're a shareholder too. If the proposal is delayed, you won't get your dividends either." I leaned back in my chair, playing on my phone, and gave them a reluctant glance. Makoto, taller than Willow, was now cowering behind her, peering at me with a challenging look. I impatiently asked, "So, what exactly do you want to say?" The moment of truth arrived, and Willow presented two options. She said, "Option 1, you help Makoto handle everything. If you're nice to him, he'll learn quickly. Option 2, you give up your shares. After that, we'll give you a fixed salary, and you won't have to worry about the company's profits or losses." I put my phone down, stood up, and applauded. I said, all right, Willow, you really have an imaginative mind. But Willow, have you forgotten why I took the shares in the first place? You said it symbolized that, in both business and love, we were one. What's going on now? Planning to team up with someone else? On the surface, you need me for the company, but deep down, you probably want me gone, don't you? Willow, you may not seem very smart, but your ideas are certainly quite naive. Chapter 5. As I hit the nail on the head, their expressions panicked. Willow furrowed her brows and then said, each word deliberate. "This is my company. I don't need you to tell me what to do." Makoto chimed in from the side, "Although you've made a lot of contributions, the highest position you've held is team leader. I thought by now, you'd have accepted reality. Now, Willow's cousin has his eyes on the company. To deal with him, Willow needs 20% of the shares. With that, she'll be the largest shareholder in the company. If I were Willow's husband, I'd just give her the shares directly, so she wouldn't have to worry." When Willow heard this, her eyes filled with tears, and she looked at Makoto with a grateful expression. She choked up, "Makoto, you really understand me." I was speechless. This was the typical simp talk, watching the two of them gaze at each other without a care in the world, their faces almost touching. I suddenly coughed loudly to make my presence known. I scoffed. Are you two not taking me seriously? Although I've known you've had someone else outside, I'm not naive enough to wear this green hat. Here's the deal. I'll sell my shares, but the marriage has to end. I'm done with this mess. I'm not getting involved anymore. A glint of excitement flashed in Makoto's eyes, and then he dragged Willow out. They whispered and schemed for a while. When they came back, Willow had a completely different attitude. She spoke softly. George, I know you're angry right now, and I won't hold what you just said against you. Please don't think we're targeting you. I'm really thinking about you. People need to look forward. Just take a rest today, and tomorrow, please report to the new department. I believe with your abilities, even if you start over, you'll quickly rise to the top. The corner of my mouth twitched. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Where did Willow learn these words? Did she forget that just a few days ago, her excuse for putting me on leave was that I wasn't capable enough? Not to mention, we've known each other for so many years, and now she's trying to guilt-trip me with this nonsense. I turned around and walked out. As I walked, I said without looking back, forget it. Look at the table. There's something good there. Chapter 6. It was a resignation letter and a divorce agreement. When I got home, I packed a few clothes and got ready to leave. Then, a call came in from the client. He asked, George, I heard you're resigning. Finally decided to leave that lousy company. Huh? How about you come work for me? I'll give you a manager position right away. I smirked and said, thank you for the offer, Mr. Chan, but I need to head home first. He responded, of course. It's been 5 years since you've been home, right? Don't hold a grudge against your parents. Even though your dad's too embarrassed to reach out to you, he's been asking people to look after you for all these years, which is why we've been doing business with the Liu family. I replied, right. Could you pass along a message to him? Tell him not to do me any favors because of Willow. We're done. After hanging up, I grabbed my suitcase and headed straight for the high-speed rail. Willow didn't even know that my family is actually quite well off, barely in the top 3 in the province. I had fallen for Willow at first sight, and pushed aside the marriage my family had arranged for me. My father was so furious he almost cut ties with me. I was stubborn, though. I actually moved out and lived a tough life for a few years. This time, when I returned home, I brought a lot of supplements for my parents. After apologizing and saying a lot of good things, their expression softened. My mom patted my back and said, we know everything that's been going on. Just relax. The rest is up to your father. My dad, with a dissatisfied expression, said, how have you ended up like this? You've let them walk all over you. I shrugged and said, I'm not going to fight over something like that. My dad continued, since she's made her choice, she should face the consequences, good or bad. After reconciling, I packed my suitcase again and left. This time, I went north and hired a ski instructor. Willow had actually said one thing that was right. I had wanted to go skiing for a long time, but I could ski alone. By the time I had learned the ropes, it had been 2 months. When I opened my phone, which had been off for so long, I was bombarded with hundreds of messages. The most recent one was a voice message from Willow. She said, George, I know I was wrong. Can you come back so we can talk? Chapter 7. I quickly skimmed through Willow's messages. They started with some accusations, like, the company is at a crucial point. How can you just leave without a word? George, you've really changed. You're not even coming home anymore. If you have the guts, don't come back. Then came confusion, like, why are all the major clients asking for their orders to be cancelled? Did you say something behind my back? George, why do you have to make things so difficult? Finally, came the pleading, like, it's not what you think between Makoto and me. We've been together for 7 years. Why don't you trust me? I really can't live without you. George, I know I was wrong. Can you come back so we can talk? Willow probably didn't realize how easy it was to read her. She wore her emotions on her face. Everything she did or wanted to do was written all over her expression. My family started opposing me being with Willow because they investigated her background. The Liu family is huge, with 2 or 3 dozen people within 3 generations. With so many mouths to feed, and relying on a barely surviving company, Willow's childhood wasn't easy. She was the only daughter in her family, but she had many cousins who stubbornly believed the family inheritance should go to the males. Only her grandfathers prevented them from directly claiming shares, so they could only target her, trying to make her life miserable, hoping she'd just disappear. When I found out about her suffering, I was heartbroken and vowed to remove the obstacles in her way. Back then, when I reformed the company, I offended a lot of people, and ended up being disliked by both families. Yet Willow hid behind me, playing the role of a virtuous wife, pretending to be a docile little wife who listened to everything I said, always apologizing for me when I offended others, keeping herself spotless. I was blinded by what I thought was love, and it took me this long to see Willow for what she really was. But none of this matters anymore. It's time for me to reclaim my life. Chapter 8. I returned to my family's company. The first project I took over was a collaboration with Willow's company. I glanced at my dad. He was leisurely making tea and said, "Aren't you and her still not done with your business? I'm just giving you a chance here." That's true. Willow and I hadn't divorced yet. So, 3 months later, I was back. The company had changed a lot. More than half of the desks were empty. The front desk was manned by a new face who smiled and asked what I needed. I replied that I was here to talk about the collaboration with Willow, as we had an appointment for this time. Her smile faltered immediately. She said, "Boss Lou isn't in right now." I raised an eyebrow and asked, "Not in? I came all the way here to the company to find her, and now she's going to ghost me." The receptionist bowed and apologized. "I'm sorry, but I'm not sure. She left half an hour ago, and hasn't returned yet. Would you like to wait for her? I can get you a cup of coffee." Curious about what Willow was up to, I agreed. Soon, someone came over and said, "George, are you coming back to work here?" I looked up to see it was the same person who had given me water last time. "What was his name again?" He replied, "George, you can just call me David," I said. "Ah, David, I see a lot of desks are empty. You haven't left yet." David tugged at his desk tag and gave a wry smile. "Yeah, too many people have left. I'm just an intern, but somehow I ended up as the team leader." While Willow was still gone, I invited David to sit down. I asked, "What's been going on these past few months? How did things end up like this?" Seeing I was curious, David saw an opportunity to vent, and immediately began spilling his frustrations. Chapter 9. It turned out that after I left, Makoto's flaws were starting to show. The reason he could get close to Willow was because of his looks and his silver tongue, not his work ability. Within the first week, he had failed to secure 3 deals, including one with a long-term client. Though I knew that Mr. Chan had torn up the contract because of me, it didn't stop the gossip from spreading throughout the company. People never liked an outsider coming in. When I was around, they had it easy. Even if they messed something up, someone would clean it up for them. But when Makoto came in, they had to split his work, clean up his mess, and still didn't get any gratitude. Soon, the most capable people in the company, after receiving their year-end bonuses, decided to resign and leave. Willow had no choice but to hire new people to fill the gaps. However, hiring people was taken over by Makoto. He was afraid that new hires might surpass him, so he refused to hire anyone with a higher degree or better skills. In the end, they hired a bunch of sycophants who were completely useless. It wasn't a case of 3 cobblers can equal a zhuge liang. The new hires couldn't even handle the work that I did alone back then. With the company losing several big clients and making poor hires, its financial burden only increased. It was then that Willow remembered my value and wanted me to come back and clean up the mess. Unfortunately, she couldn't get in touch with me. Willow was displeased with Makoto's disruptions and had ignored him for several days. Later, I don't know what kind of sweet talk Makoto used on her, but not only did she forgive him, but they also publicly flaunted their relationship at the company. The remaining employees also flattered them, saying they were a perfect match. After making Willow happy, Makoto's behavior became even more outrageous. For example, whenever he didn't like someone, he would resort to underhanded tactics to frame them, then twist the story to Willow. She, being emotional, would blindly fire the employees. He thought that by doing so, he could prove his position in the Lu group. What he didn't realize was that the company had already lost quite a bit just dealing with the N+1 liabilities. Today, things went even further. Makoto fell down the stairs. Although it was just a few steps, he insisted on being hospitalized. Knowing there was a client meeting in the afternoon, Willow still went with him. I listened to all these gossiping details, and only when David was about to finish his shift did Willow finally return. Chapter 10. 3 months had passed, and Willow looked considerably more haggard, with fine lines appearing on her face. When she saw me, her eyes widened in surprise before she quickly walked over with a smile, saying, "George, you're finally back. I knew you couldn't let go of the company, couldn't let go of me." Before she could finish her sentence, I pushed her hand away, coldly replying, "Miss Lu, please respect yourself. I'm here for business." I waved the folder I was holding in front of her, sneering, "Miss Lu, you sure have a lot of authority. This is the first time I've seen someone let a client wait for 4 hours without a single apology." Willow swallowed hard, disbelief written across her face as she asked, "Are you with Penguin Tech? How is this possible? The company hasn't even approved your resignation." I closed my eyes, feeling helpless. "Stop making a scene. Don't forget, I've already submitted my resignation, handed over my work, and it's been 3 months since I last showed up. Let's just say, who says I can't work 2 jobs? And right now, it's not your place to question me with your company's attitude. I think we should cancel this collaboration." Willow finally realized that I was no longer the small employee she could easily manipulate. she quickly grabbed my arm, saying, "George, let's talk properly. Okay, there's a reason for this." Makoto fell down the stairs and almost broke his leg. I couldn't help but laugh. I asked, "Almost broke his leg? So, he didn't break it? Isn't Makoto in his 20s now? Don't tell me a man his age can't go to the hospital by himself. Or are you telling me that with such a big company, no one else went with him? Or is it that in your eyes, a few million in contracts are less important than Makoto himself?" Willow was speechless after my series of questions, unable to come up with a response. She could only mutter, "After all, he was injured in my company." I raised my hand to stop her from speaking further. I said, "I don't care about the love and hate between you two. I didn't sit here for 4 hours just to question you. We can continue discussing this collaboration, but you'll need to go with me and get the divorce done." Chapter 11. Because of my unyielding attitude, Willow reluctantly led me into her office and began discussing the design proposal. This was a big project for me, a design and renovation for a new branch of a company. If successful, Lou's company could earn at least $1 million. But as I listened to her stutter through the explanation, I could tell something was off. Resting my head on my hand, I said with a half smile, "Who made this proposal? Was it Makoto? Didn't you say he learns quickly? How is it that even the data is wrong now? Do you really need 2,000 tiles for an 800 square meter space? Should I find a primary school student to do the math? Makoto's 211 degree, did he buy that?" Willow fell silent, her face turning pale. I didn't have the patience to listen to her excuses any longer. I stood up and said, "In that case, there's no need for us to collaborate." She rushed over, grabbing my sleeve, forcing a bitter smile. She asked, "So, can we not get divorced?" Willow's thought process was something I couldn't quite figure out. I chuckled coldly. "Wasn't it you who said work and family should be kept separate? Why is it that now you can't make up your mind?" Yes, no one in the company knew that Willow and I were married, because she didn't want people to think we were a nepotistic couple. This would make dealing with troublesome relatives difficult. I hid our marriage certificate for 5 years. As the burden on me grew and our time together grew less, even though we still lived under the same roof every night, our feelings for each other slowly faded. We were more like roommates than a married couple. So when I found out about Willow's infidelity, I wasn't surprised at all. It was just a little frustrating when I sat down to write the divorce papers. Chapter 12. That day, David sent me a message. He said, "George, did you know that Willow is in the hospital?" I raised an eyebrow and asked what had happened. It turns out Willow's relatives had shown up. Originally, 70% of the company's shares were spread out, with each relative holding a small portion. Each of them had a say in the company's management. It was me, using the savings I had accumulated over the years, who provided Willow with the initial capital to buy back those shares, one by one. After the successful restructuring, for some reason, Willow ended up selling off a portion of her shares at a high price. But at the time, she didn't report many numbers to me, so I didn't pay much attention. However, she lied to me. With the money the company made in the past few years, even if we didn't live extravagantly, we could have lived comfortably and easily made it to our old age without worry. But Willow couldn't hold on to that money. Like someone head over heels in love, she spent it all on Makoto. She still wore outdated clothes, but bought Makoto luxury watches and sports cars. By the time I resigned, she was already living beyond her means. Her shares kept decreasing, and soon enough, she realized that she no longer held the majority stake. So, under Makoto's encouragement, she set her sights on the 5% I owned. No wonder she'd once told me she had 20%. At the time, I didn't think much of it, assuming Makoto made a mistake. It turns out he had been waiting for this moment all along. Now, the company had fallen into the hands of her cousin. This cousin, Kevin, was somewhat capable. He had his own entrepreneurial ventures and wasn't the lazy type. When Kevin announced that Willow was to be suspended, she couldn't handle it and fainted. The hospital diagnosed her with early-stage brain cancer. My feelings toward Willow were always complicated. I couldn't forgive her betrayal and backstabbing, but I had genuinely liked her once. In the end, I went to the hospital to see her. Chapter 13. When Willow saw me, she started crying. She grabbed my hand, choking on her sobs, and said, "I'm sorry, George. It's only today that I realize you were the only one who truly cared for me." I placed a bouquet of lilies on her bedside and raised an eyebrow. I asked, "Oh, what do you mean?" Through Willow's tearful recounting, I pieced together the full story. It turns out that as soon as Willow ran into trouble, Makoto was also kicked out. In the past few days, Willow had only seen Makoto once. He came to break up with her. He said he needed a rich woman who could let him live a comfortable life, but Willow was no longer able to provide that for him. Makoto really perfected the art of living off others, almost causing Willow to faint in anger. Willow yelled at him to return the money, but Makoto had prepared for this. As soon as he accepted those funds, he made sure there was evidence showing that Willow had willingly given him the money. Even if Willow tried to sue him, all she'd recover were small, insignificant amounts after a long and exhausting process. And now, with her terminal illness, she needed a large sum for medical bills. The only good thing Makoto did was pay a $5,000 deposit for Willow's treatment. After that, he disappeared completely. Willow's relatives had also come to see her a few times, and without exception, they all wanted her to give up her shares. Wiping away her tears, she said, "They don't care whether I live or die. All they want is to drain my last bit of value." After venting, she looked up at me, cautiously asking, "George, you won't abandon me, right?" I nodded. Before she could smile, I continued, "How could I abandon you? We still haven't divided up our assets. You still have 2 properties under your name, don't you? Let's figure out how to split them." Chapter 14. Willow shamelessly refused to agree and kicked me out. She said, "I won't divorce you. I know you're just upset. Don't worry. I'll wait for you to come back to me." Then she added, "You just want to abandon me. You used to say you were heartbroken for me and would take care of me for the rest of my life. We've been together for 7 years, and now that I have cancer, you still want a divorce. You're no different from those bastard relatives of mine." It's hard to believe that these 2 contradictory statements came out of Willow's mouth one after another. People outside overheard her words and looked at me with reproachful eyes. They whispered, "This guy looks decent, but who would have thought he'd do something like this? He's wasted that girl's 7 years. It's about time he paid her back." Willow didn't expect to receive such recognition and immediately became arrogant, saying, "Did you hear that? You're still my husband. You should take care of me." My expression turned cold. I smiled and said, "Willow, since you still remember we've been together for 7 years, you should know I'm not one to fall for moral blackmail. Fine, if you want to make a scene, if you want to drag this out, I'll play along. I'll pay for your medical bills, and when the time for separation comes, I'll file for divorce. Let's see who can outlast the other." With that, I turned and left, leaving Willow alone to silently cry. The next day, the internet was flooded with insults directed at me. It turns out someone had recorded our conversation from yesterday and edited it to make me look like the scumbag, creating a story around me. In no time, netizens were enraged, accusing me of being irresponsible, and because my face wasn't blurred, my name, address, and phone number were quickly uncovered. I received a barrage of cruel messages and phone calls, with words so offensive that they almost needed a censor. I glanced at my phone and turned it off. I couldn't help but laugh. I wasn't just using one phone, and I had several houses. Trying to crush me with online harassment was still too naive. Chapter 15. My mom called and asked, "What's going on with all that stuff online? Do you need me to help lower the heat?" I refused and said, "I actually hope those videos get even more attention. After all, the higher they raise you, the harder you'll fall." After hearing me out, my mom immediately poured some money into boosting the video's popularity. Then, right after someone threw paint on the front of my house, someone came to see me. It was Kevin. He brought a bottle of red wine as a gift. I asked, "Were those things online from you?" Kevin chuckled lightly and said, "Why would I do that? You've already left the company. There's no need for me to target you." I shook my head and said, "Not necessarily. Aren't you afraid I might reconcile with Willow?" Kevin looked at me, his gaze sharp. He said, "I know you're not the kind of person who cares about those opinions. You could easily resolve it, but with the evidence I have, it'll be much easier for you to get what you want." I leaned back, half of my body sinking into the recliner. I asked, "Then what is it that you want?" Kevin opened the bottle of wine and poured me a glass. He said, "I'd like to ask Mr. Wong for a favor. What I want isn't much, just something within your means." I took the glass of wine and said, "How strange. When did the Liu family produce someone this clever? I thought they only knew how to live off the old fortune." Actually, as soon as I heard his name, his profile had already been presented to me. Kevin was an illegitimate child. It wasn't until he made a name for himself that he was acknowledged by the family, and they hoped he would help support them in their old age. Kevin didn't have much affection for the Liu family. His mother had thought she had found true love, but after she got pregnant, she found out he was already married. After angrily breaking up, the fetus was already 4 months old, and if she had gone for an abortion, it could have endangered her life. Kevin's birth was never welcomed by anyone. He was a self-made man, step by step, all the way to where he was today. And his return to the Liu family was only to use the company as a stepping stone for his own goals. Chapter 16. After seeing Kevin's background, I couldn't help but reflect. In this world, there is no such thing as the worst situation, only worse ones. When I was in love with Willow, I would be heartbroken whenever she faced even the slightest injustice. Now that I no longer loved her, even if she had cancer, I felt no sympathy. The only concession I made was my final act of kindness. Kevin didn't take advantage of me. He simply bought the 5% share I owned at a fair price and expressed interest in future collaboration. Things quickly took a turn. When someone dug up that I was the only son of the G family, I issued a statement through the company's official Weibo account. I consolidated the evidence I had with Kevin and published the full video from the hospital, establishing that Willow had been cheating during our marriage. Netizens quickly began discussing. This woman is turning the tables. She was the one who cheated first, and now she's blaming the ex-husband for not taking care of her after her lover ran off. She's out of her mind. If I were in her place and was morally blackmailed, I'd snap and start hitting people. Apologies to George. Sorry, I wrongly blamed you earlier. Once the statement was released and the evidence posted, netizens began to turn on Willow. I heard that many people who had been used as pawns in the hospital went to confront her. Willow couldn't handle the shock and fainted. When she regained consciousness, the brain tumor had spread further. The doctor said that if she didn't have surgery soon, the tumor might press on her optic nerve and cause blindness. Her surgery was scheduled for the following week. She was frightened and reached out to me again. She said, "Just stay with me through the surgery, and afterward I'll agree to divorce you." I agreed. But before 2 days had passed, I made a trip to the police station. It wasn't for nothing. Willow had an accident. She had fallen down the stairs, hitting her head and leaving a large gash. There was no major issue, but when she woke up, she started shouting that someone was trying to kill her. The doctors couldn't convince her, so they checked the surveillance footage. It turned out that someone had indeed pushed her from behind. However, the person was wearing a mask and glasses, so their identity was unclear. After Willow reported it to the police, she claimed she knew the person and pointed the blame at me. Chapter 17. Well, it turns out, I did know the person. When I found out Willow was cheating, I had specifically followed her for a while. Her intimate moments with her lover were etched into my mind, impossible to forget. So, when I saw the figure in the surveillance footage, I immediately knew who it was. Yes, it was Makoto who had pushed Willow. After I gave my statement, the police immediately moved to arrest Makoto. Makoto, knowing he couldn't escape, admitted to the crime in hopes of getting a lighter sentence for cooperating. It turned out that Kevin had also made a deal with Willow regarding the shares, and Kevin's promise to her was to help her recover the money from Makoto and to interfere with his new relationship. Makoto had attached himself to a new rich woman, but she was also married, and her husband had a much shorter temper than mine. When the husband found out about Makoto, he had Makoto stripped and dragged through the streets while cursing him out. After that incident, Makoto's reputation was completely ruined. As if things couldn't get worse, Makoto was also sued by both Kevin and Willow. They accused him of embezzling company funds and demanded he pay back the money. Makoto, being a reckless person, didn't want to see anyone else doing better than him, so he targeted Willow. In the end, since Willow refused to settle, Makoto was sentenced to 6 years in prison, and his cars, houses, and other assets were auctioned off to cover the debts. Willow's surgery was a success. The doctor said that as long as she followed the treatment plan and had regular checkups, living for several more decades wouldn't be a problem. The day she was discharged from the hospital was the same day we went to register our divorce. Chapter 18. Walking out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Willow looked at me hesitantly and asked, "Will you get married again in the future?" I casually tucked the divorce certificate into my pocket and replied, "It's hard to say. If I find someone I'm interested in, I'll pursue it. If not, it's fine. After all, my money is enough to support me in my old age." Seeing my relaxed attitude, Willow's eyes reddened. She said, "You're always like this, as if nothing can affect you." Actually, at first, I didn't mean to cheat. I just wanted to get your attention, to see if you'd get jealous and angry over me. But gradually, I was put on a pedestal by Makoto. His mind and eyes were all on me, and that's what I wanted to feel from you. I glanced at her, speechless, and said, "It doesn't matter now. It's pointless to talk about these things at this point. Maybe I didn't do everything right, but at least I didn't betray you. Your remorse, your apologies, and your love can no longer stir anything in me, because, from today, we're strangers. Take care of yourself, Willow." I wouldn't tell her that I had also been confused at times, that I had cried in the dead of night, and that I had cursed the world for the cruel jokes it played on me. But people always move forward. What doesn't kill me only becomes the driving force for my future. So what if I lost love? There are still countless beautiful views waiting for me to see.